Hello everyone. Today I will be going over the installation process for Cushion, our plugin for Grasshopper interfacing with Sofa. And this tutorial will be divided into 3 sections. The first will be downloading Sofa, its version of Python and required libraries, and getting a first run. The second section will be setting up Rhino's own Python interpreter, as well as gmsh, which is required for the plugin. And finally, it will be about getting started with Cushion, how to install it, how to set up your first examples, and begin designing soft robots of your own. So once you have Rhino open, we'll get Grasshopper open. You can go ahead and type Grasshopper or click this icon here. You can also find it in the Tools panel. And once Grasshopper gets opened, we'll head over to the repository. So in the repository, we want to scroll down. We can find the link to Food for Rhino. On Food for Rhino, we have some documentation based around the requirements. And you can find the download links to both just the gha file and this first download link, which is in the package manager in Rhino, as well as the second, which is actually a zip of all the files in the repository. So heading back over, on the repo page, you can go ahead and clone or download that same zip from the second link. But we will jump into the install markdown, which has detailed instructions on how you can go through this process, or just follow along from this video. So to get started, we will begin by downloading Sofa version 24.06. On this page here, you can find the dependencies for both Windows and Mac. And you can go ahead and download the binaries from the zip file here, or the executable to download it to your system, which I've already done before. Here in the Sofa folder, make sure you note down or copy over this path, as you will need it later once we get into the examples. But for now, we can go through and download the required dependencies, first being Microsoft Visual C++ 2022. And I already have it installed on this device, so we can go ahead and skip. Next, we'll need to download Python 3.10 and the required libraries. So here I've already downloaded that executable. I'll run it as administrator. And one thing to point out is to make sure you add python.exe to path before installation so that we can actually have the program itself run Sofa. From there, we can go ahead and download NumPy and SciPy to that version of Python. And once that is installed, we can actually test to make sure that Sofa works by either clicking on the Run Sofa in the bin folder or the command prompt here. If you see this demo that the Sofa team has put together, then everything is working up until this point. So next, we want to actually get the version of Python that is used in Rhino, which is Python 3.9. And to do that, we'll head back into Grasshopper and we want to put down a Python script, which we can even search for by double-clicking or pressing space, or finding it under the Maths tab here. Python 3 script. And you'll see that on the first time will initialize this version of Python and actually make a folder in your users directory on your computer. And this is where we need to download some required dependencies, such as gmsh, the program we will use for the volumetric meshing to interface with Sofa. Here's the Python 3.9-rh8. This path we can use to pip install gmsh. That should be a relatively short installation. And from this point, we just need to make sure that Cushion is set up properly. So there's 2 ways to download Cushion to your system and make sure you have the components in Grasshopper. The first is to head into your special folders components folder using the Grasshopper window. This will open your libraries folder, and from here, you can go to the Cushion repository and copy over the gha from the dist folder. However, now that Cushion is in the package manager, you can actually type package manager into Rhinoceros and search for the Cushion plugin there. By hitting install, this adds the components to your version of Grasshopper and they will appear once you restart your Rhino. So now I've restarted Rhino. I can go over and open Grasshopper again. And here you'll be able to see in the top right, the Cushion tab that has all of the various components that are able to be dragged onto the canvas and interfaced with. Now, to get started, we've provided two different examples in the repository. In the examples folder, you can find two GH files. I'll go ahead and open the continuum robot GH. And here you can see a lot of things all on the canvas. However, just by starting it up the first time, we'll have an error because paths are not correctly set. So you can find in blue the locations where you will have to copy your paths into separate panels. So we can go ahead and find that path from previous, the one housing our sofa version and the bin folder, and copy that over to our run sofa location. Then we can find the repository from the GitHub, so Cushion master, and copy that path. And then finally, we can just create a folder for the specific project we are working on. So here, I'll just set up a test folder somewhere on my local device. And from there, we can have full functionality. If you do this correctly, you'll notice that in your Rhino viewport, we actually are able to see a preview of our sofa scene. So this is actually the object that we'll have in sofa. We find that we no longer have the errors that we had at the start, and we can actually just click this run sofa button, and this should open a batch which runs sofa on your machine. Here it's running off screen, so I'll drag it on. And here you can see within this example, we have some actuation protocol commanding 3 tendons sequentially for this sort of cylindrical robot to move within its workspace. And while this is happening, we have these pink dots along this continuum that are points that are being tracked. So now I can refresh the sofa results and the sofa shape. And here you can see some of those results we just got from our sofa running. You can take a look at a deformed mesh that is generated with the sofa shape component. The sofa preview is the one that shows how your scene is set up. And then the sofa results we can see here are showing the tip trajectory as it goes through that protocol. So with all that being said, if you have any issues throughout any of that installation process, please feel free to leave a comment below or set an issue on our GitHub page. In the next days, we'll go ahead and post a video that goes deeper into the examples, as well as walks you through starting out from scratch on the Grasshopper canvas to set up a soft robotic simulation of your own.